Alrighty, it is 9 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and dive on in here. I'm gonna close the door because that buzzing light in my hallway drives me bonkers. And so if anyone is on your way who's on Zoom, please feel free to come in even though the door is closed. Alrighty, I'm just checking in the folks who signed on a little later here. Okay. Alrighty, so I wanted to take just a couple minutes today to kind of remind you where we're at on the syllabus, since we're really at halfway throughout the semester. And then we will keep talking about social psych. So, sort of a we are here. And so, reminder to be keeping up with your Connect assignments. Reminder to be keeping up with those explain it to the media quizzes, especially since those will help you on the exam. The next exam will be distributed a week from today in class. So make sure that you plan to be here in person a week from today to pick that up. And then the other thing that a lot of people haven't had a chance to turn in yet is your topic for the infographic. And so just a reminder, if you're like, wait, what's that? There are detailed instructions here on the syllabus where you're going to be doing an infographic about one of the popular myths in psychology. And you're not limited to these 50 most common, but that's a nice jumping off point. And so what to do is just your myth, and then 2 pieces of information that show your myth is incorrect. So articles, books, things like that, some references. Your outline will be coming up due in about half a month. But the big thing is to get in that topic so that you're thinking about what am I actually going to present about. Alrighty, so we are gonna go ahead and dive back in. Today we're gonna be watching a lot of little videos. So I do have the sound shared for folks on Zoom. But a lot of these sort of classic experiments were filmed in social psych, and so it's nice to see what they look like. So we've been talking about consumer psych and influencing people, and we know that one of the biggest things that gets people to be influenced by others is the power of conformity. And conformity is altering your attitudes or behaviors to adhere to social norms. So altering your attitudes or behaviors to adhere to social norms. And those might be explicit. People might just directly say, these are the social norms, this is what you're supposed to do. Or they might be implicit, implied. You just kind of like see what everybody else is doing. And so the dynamics of conformity were best explored in the experiment conducted by Solomon Asch in 1955. This is a classic study where he actually got people to conform to the wrong answers on a very simplistic task, a very simplistic mock perception task. One of the interesting things he found is that conformity went up the more people were in the room, only to a point. So if the group was 7 members, all the other 7 members were agreeing with the wrong answer. The person who was the test subject was most likely to disagree. And you might be like, Dr. Myers, what the heck are you talking about? This all sounds really weird. Well, this is what he gave people. He said, okay, look at the line in Exhibit 1. Which of the lines in Exhibit 2 does it match up with? And hopefully everybody in the room could look and be like, well, A, duh, right? They were always this obvious. But I have a video that shows you sort of what happened.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines.
There.
As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials.
And so this guy's the test subject. All the other guys are guys who are either being paid or volunteering to be part of the experiment and seem like they're just other dudes in the room.
The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2. 2.
2,
2.
2, 3,
3. 3. 3.
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2, 2,
2.
2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1,
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1. 1.
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1,
1.
1,
2.
1.
I just love the side eye. I'm like, right? So even though they're not like explicitly saying, hey, dude, what are you doing? There's a lot of like social pressure, right? And I don't know why YouTube's being so weird, but I got it to back to normal full screen here.
2, 2,
2.
I know they're wrong, but why
2.
should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing
2.
with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2.
2,
2.
2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1,
1. 2.
1, 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Asch. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1.
1, 1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Asch's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
And so I think there are probably some pretty obvious reasons why psychologists in the 50s and 60s were interested in compliance and obedience and conformity, right? We had just been through World War II. People were aware of what happened during the Holocaust. And lay people, psychologists, everyone was asking, how could normal people just go along with Hitler? Right? How could they just do these horrible things to other people? And so they started to study things like compliance and conformity. Compliance is when people yield to social pressure in their public behavior. So they yield to social pressure in their public behavior, even though their private beliefs haven't changed. So kind of similar to the conformity we just saw, these people might have known, I mean, they had to know, right? Putting people in gas chambers and killing a whole bunch of them all at once is wrong, right? But because of the pressure from people in charge, they complied, they went through with these actions. And then this got psychologists thinking about obedience. And obedience is a form of compliance that occurs when people follow direct commands. So a form of compliance when people follow direct commands. And the person issuing the commands, not surprisingly, is usually someone in a position of authority. So you're following direct commands from someone in a position of authority. So Stanley Milgram's classic study in 1963 showed that people's tendency to obey is strong, even if they're directly asked to harm another person. And so what Milgram did is similar to Ash. He had what we call confederates, someone who was in on the study, but who came in and acted as if they were a participant. And then the actual participant, the actual test subject came in and they told them, okay, we're going to draw rules for this experiment out of a hat. And they were told it's going to be a list learning. Someone's going to be the teacher. Someone's going to be the student. What the subject didn't know is that they always got teacher. The confederate was always playing the student. And so the student was set up in this other room. And they said they're going to be shocked by you every time they get something wrong. We're trying to see if this helps people learn better. They even showed like a test shock and gave it to the teacher. And then they went in the other room and the experimenter sat there purposely in a white lab coat to try to like give some authority and told the person, you got to keep going. So every time the teacher would be hesitant, the actual test participant would be hesitant. Like, I don't want to hurt this person. Do I really have to shock them? They would say, you have to go, you have to go, you have to go. And what this chart shows are the level of shocks they administered. Now, they didn't know this, but the learner, the confederate, was not getting any shocks, but they thought they were giving them shocks. And over half of people, close to 70%, went all the way to the highest level of shocks. And so I have a video about when they tried to do a modern recreation of this and walk folks through the same study stopping much sooner. But you'll see essentially how much people got upset just by this.
Hi, I'm Chris Cuomo, and welcome to our Primetime Webcast, a look at one of the most shocking experiments of the last 50 years, literally. Imagine this scenario. You go to a prestigious university to participate in a learning and memory experiment. When you arrive, you discover that the teaching instrument is this machine, which seems to give electroshocks to a man on the other side of the wall. As you move up the scale, he begins to scream out in pain.
The experiment requires that you continue.
The experimenter pressures you to go on. Would you agree to continue? 45 years ago, Dr. Stanley Milgram came up with this experiment to test whether people would blindly follow the orders of an authority figure. He found that 2/3 of his subjects were willing to give the most dangerous shock on the machine. We teamed up with Dr. Jerry Berger, a social psychologist at Santa Clara University in California, to see whether people have changed since then.
Wrong. 90 volts.
The typical response is to turn toward the experimenter and, if not say something, at least give a look that says, what should I do?
In our new experiment, how many people would agree to follow the orders of an authority figure?
Ow. That's incorrect.
39-year-old Troy Shasker is an electrician. He's been paid $50 to participate and told that the money is his to keep even if he quits the experiment early. He's worried about the dangers of the electroshock machine.
Wow. I don't think I should shock him that hard if he really does screw up. That's been a severe shock there.
Yeah, there are 25.
I could just go get my shotgun.
There are 20.
In the room next door, Troy watches as the learner gets strapped into his chair and really gets nervous once he hears him say this.
I should probably bring up, a couple of years ago at Kaiser, they diagnosed a mild heart condition. I'm really not too worried about it. It's not that serious. But
well, you should know that while the shocks that we'll be using today may be painful, they're not dangerous. Okay?
Milgram intended that scripted exchange to set up a conflict in the subject's mind, a choice between the health of the learner and the authority of the experimenter.
Number 1.
Then the test begins.
Blue, boy, girl, grass, hat.
The learner must decide which of the 4 words is the correct match. At first, everything goes smoothly.
Correct.
I was confident that he was doing really good at first, and then it started looking bad.
Then, at 75 volts, Troy hears the first sign of trouble.
Soft, rug, pillow, hair, grass. Incorrect. 75 volts.
I could actually hear him next door going, ow, oh, and he kept getting things wrong.
Incorrect. 90 volts. He doesn't like that.
At 105 volts, he's clearly uneasy.
I got a little moist on my forehead there. I wasn't comfortable. I can't tell you why I listened to him and kept going. I should have just said no.
The correct word was duck. Rock, house.
At 150 volts.
Incorrect. 150 volts.
That's all.
Will Troy listen as the learner begs him to stop, or will he follow Brian's orders?
Tell him the correct word, pair, white.
The correct word was white horse.
And the next item, please continue.
The next item is sad.
He obeys the orders.
Face.
Why didn't you stop?
I saw him getting strapped in, and they were just like little. I mean, he could have just, if he was in that much pain, he could have just tore himself off.
Why are you putting it on him and not you or the experimenter?
I was just doing my job. I was doing what I was supposed to do.
75 volts.
So I guess the influence of having the conductor of the experiment right there next to me, telling me to keep going, had a lot to do with it.
For the past 30 years, there have been severe restrictions on using humans in social psychology research. To avoid putting subjects under too much stress, Dr. Berger made a significant change to our experiment.
in this experiment, you stopped at 150 make-believe volts. In Milgram, they went much higher.
We stopped for ethical reasons. We couldn't put people through the agony that Milgram's participants went through.
I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now.
Are there clues that indicate whether certain people might be more compliant with authority?
Wrong. 90 volts.
When you were watching, how good were you at guessing, oh, this person may go or this may not?
It was impossible to tell. I tried to guess. I tried to look for signs, body language, anything to try to guess who's going to continue and who's going to stop. And that tells me that it's not that there are certain kinds of people who are obviously different from the rest of us. It tells me that probably all of us are capable.
Thanks for watching our primetime webcast, and be sure
And so as you heard, they altered it, right? To make it a little bit less stressful. We might not watch this whole thing, but now it's up here. There we go. This is the full documentary from the original Milgram experiment. And so you'll see a little bit of how stressful this was for the people who were the teachers.
It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale University. The subjects are 40 males between the ages of 20 and 50 residing in the greater New Haven area. They were obtained by a newspaper advertisement and direct mail solicitation. The subjects range in occupation from corporation presidents to good humormen and plumbers, and in educational level from one who had not finished elementary school to subjects who have doctorate and other professional degrees.
Seat right here. Now, both of you have been paid, so let me sit right down. So let me say that the checks are yours simply for showing up at the lab. And from this point on, no matter what happens, the money is yours. I should like to tell both of you a little about the memory project. Psychologists have developed several theories to explain how people learn various types of material. Some of the better-known theories are treated in the book over there, The Teaching Learning Process by Cantor. One theory is that people learn things correctly whenever they get punished for making a mistake. A common application to this theory would be when parents spank a child if he does something wrong. But actually, we know very little about the effect of punishment on learning because almost no truly scientific studies have been made of it in human beings. For instance, we don't know how much punishment is best for learning. And we don't know how much difference it makes as to who's giving the punishment, whether an adult learns best from an older or a younger person himself, or many things of this sort. So what we're doing project is bringing together a number of adults of different occupations and ages, and we're asking some of them to be teachers and some to be learners. We want to find out just what effect different people have on each other as teachers and learners, and also what effect punishment will have on learning in this situation. Therefore, I'm going to ask one of you to be the teacher here this afternoon, and the other to be the learner. And the way we usually decide is to let you draw from these two pieces of paper on which I've written the two positions. If this is agreeable with both of you, we can do it that way. If you take one, please. You know the other. Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learner. Teacher. All right, now the next thing we'll have to do is set the learner up so that he can get some sort of punishment. So, learner, would you step out here with me, please? You want to step right in here, learner, and have a seat there. You can leave your coat on the back of that chair if you will, please. Take it right off. That's fine. Have a seat right here and pull yourself right up to the counter, please. Teacher, you may look on if you'd like while we get set up in here. Would you roll up your right sleeve, please? Left. Fine. Now what I'm going to do is strap down your arms to avoid any excessive movement on your part during the experiment. Is that too tight? That's all right. Okay. This electrode is connected to the shock generator in the next room. And this electrode paste is to provide a good contact to avoid any blister or burn. All right, now let me explain to you, learner, exactly what's going to happen and what you're supposed to do. The teacher will read a list of word pairs to you like these. Blue girl, nice day, fat neck, and so forth. You are to try to remember each pair. For the next time through, the teacher will read only the first word or the first half of the word pair. For example, he will say blue. And then he'll read 4 other words, such as boy, girl, grass, hat. Now your job is to remember which one of these 4 other words was originally paired with blue. And you indicate your answer by pressing one of these 4 switches. Now can you reach those all right? That's fine. Now if the first word I just read, boy, had been paired with blue, you'd press the first switch, and this will indicate to the teacher that you thought it was the first word. If you thought it had been the second word, girl, you'd press the second switch, and so forth for the third word, the third switch, the fourth word, the fourth switch. Now if you get it correct, fine. If you make an error, however, you'll be punished with an electric shock. So of course it is to your advantage that you learn all these word pairs as quickly as possible.
I think so.
Do you have any questions now before we go into the next room?
No, but I think I should say this. About 2 years ago, I was at the Veterans Hospital in West Haven. And while there, they detected a heart condition. There's nothing serious, but as long as I'm having these shocks, how strong are they? How dangerous are they?
Well, no, although they may be painful, they're not dangerous. Anything else?
No, that's all.
All right, teacher, would you take the test and be seated in front of the shock generator, please, in the next room? This machine generates electric shocks, and when you press one of the switches all the way down, the learner gets a shock. When you release it, the shock stops, you see, like that. The switch will remain in this middle position after you've released it to show you which switches you've used on the board. Of course, if you were to press any one of them again, the learner would get another shock.
All subjects are given identical instructions and a sample shock.
The machine is now on. To give you, the teacher, an idea of how much shock the learner is getting, we think it's only fair that you receive a sample shock yourself. Are you agreeable with this? Sorry, I have to. Would you pull up your right sleeve a little bit, please? I'll go to the right. That's fine. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and estimate the number of volts you receive in the sample shock. Do not open your eyes until I tell you to do so, please. Would you close them now? Okay, you may open your eyes, and using the voltage scale here, would you estimate for me the number of volts you received, please? You may also use the verbal designations, slight, moderate, strong, so forth, to help you. Same a number, please? Would you? About 75. 75. No, actually, it was 45 here. Although it may have seemed stronger because of the electrode paste, which provides a perfect contact. All right, let's go on to our instructions. We will begin with this test. You will read each pair of words in this list once to the learner until you've read through the entire list. Direct your voice toward that microphone, as the rooms are partially soundproof. After you've read through the list once, you will go on to the next page. And here, starting from line A, you'll read the word in large letters, along with each of the other words in the line. For example, in the first line, you read blue, boy, girl, grass, hat. Now, after you've read the 4 choices, the learner pushes one of the switches on the board in front of him, and the number he has selected will light up in this box, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, if he gives the correct answer, you say correct and go on to the next line. The correct answer is underlined and is also indicated in the right margin. Yeah. If he were to indicate the wrong answer, you would say wrong. Then tell him the number of volts you're going to give him. Then give him the punishment. Then read the correct word pair once, and then go on to the next line. For example, if he indicated 3 for blue, you would say wrong. 15 volts. You press and release the switch. Read blue girl, and then go on to the next line. I see. I see. Now, each time he gives a wrong answer, you move up one switch on the shock generator. I see. And it's important that you follow this procedure exactly. So to help you, let me go through it again very quickly. All right. I would suggest you read the list and the test at a brisk pace to keep it moving. Right? And, of course, we'll begin with 15 volts for the first wrong answer. Okay? Do not begin until I say ready, begin, please. Attention, learner. Your teacher is about to begin the test. Try and remember the word pairs. Ready? Begin, please.
Blue girl. Nice day. Fat neck.
The early stages of the test pass uneventfully.
Incorrect. You'll now get a shock of 75 volts.
Oh.
Soft hair. He kind of did some yelling in there.
Continue, please.
Incorrect. You'll now get a shock of 105 volts. Hard head. Just how far can you go in this thing?
As far as is necessary.
What do you mean, as far as is necessary?
To complete the test. We'll find all the words. Please continue.
I sure don't know the effect of this thing, and I'm a little...
Around here, we work hard. Up above and on the shore, we need...
skeptical about electricity.
The experiment requires that
Sorry, I just love that he's skeptical about electricity. So we'll watch a little more of this. As you can see, the people who were in the teacher position started to get pretty worried, pretty upset about the other guy. And this will show their level of distress.
Go on, teacher. Please continue.
Incorrect. 150 volts.
Oh,
Sad face.
experimenter. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please.
Continue.
My heart's starting to bother me. I refuse to go on. Let me out.
I think we ought to find out what's wrong in there first.
The experiment requires that you continue, teacher.
Well, the experiment might require that we continue, but I still think we should find out what the condition of the gentleman is.
Now, as I said before, although the shocks may be painful, they're not dangerous.
Look, I don't know anything about electricity. I don't profess any knowledge, nor will I go any further until I find out if the guy's okay.
It's absolutely essential that you continue.
Well, essential or not, this program isn't quite that important to me that I should go along doing something that I know nothing about, particularly if it's going to injure someone. I don't know what this is all about.
Well, whether the learner likes it or not, we must go on until he's learned all the word pairs correctly.
Well, you can sure have your 450 back. I didn't want it anyhow. I intend to give it to some charitable organization, but I wouldn't go on with it.
The 450 is not the issue here. That check is yours simply
Yeah, I
to
realize.
to the lab. It is essential that you continue the experiment.
No, it isn't essential. Not one bit.
You have no other choice, teacher.
Oh, I have a lot of choices. My number one choice is that I wouldn't go on if I thought he was being harmed.
The teacher was, of necessity, placed in a difficult predicament, and steps had to be taken to assure his well-being before he was discharged from the laboratory. After an extended discussion with the experimenter, a friendly reconciliation was arranged between teacher and learner.
Oh, you sure had me going. You feel better now? Much better.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Wrong. It's hair. 75 volts, Jim.
Oh.
Yo,
Yeah. Please continue.
cool. Wrong. It's head.
What's really interesting is like when these people were uncomfortable and not wanting to do this, you'll see a lot of like inappropriate laughter because they just don't know how to react.
105 volts. I don't know. Wet. Wrong. It's horse. 150 volts.
Oh. Experimenter. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please. My heart's starting to bother me. I refuse to go on. Let me out.
Continue, teacher, please. Go on. The next word is sad.
Well, I'm not going on if he refuses to do it.
The experiment requires that you go on, teacher.
If he refuses, I won't.
Whether the learner likes it or not, we must go on until he's learned all the word
Take the check back. I'm not going to hurt the guy.
No, the check's not the issue. It's absolutely essential that you continue.
Well, he don't want to. I refuse to.
So you have no other choice. You must
Yes,
go on.
I have a choice.
That is, if you don't continue, we're going to have to discontinue the experiment.
We'll have to. He says cut it out. After all, he knows what he can stand. If I took that thing, the slight one, it was enough for me. I wouldn't want to be getting that every time I got a wrong answer. That's my opinion. That's where I'm going to stand on it.
And so as you could hear, the experimenter had like a rote script of responses they gave to try to get the person to keep going on.
How do you feel?
How do I feel? He was getting a shock. I feel all right.
I'd like to ask you something. At one point, you were doing something a little unusual. Were you laughing at one point?
Yes, I was. At first I was laughing at him when I heard him yell, ouch.
Why do you think you were laughing?
I don't know. I thought it was funny, I suppose. And then I got to think, when he said, no, that's enough, he had enough, so it wasn't funny to me then.
One might suppose that a subject would simply break off or continue as his conscience and temperament dictate, yet this is very far from what happened. There were powerful reactions of tension and emotional strain in a substantial portion of the teachers. One puzzling sign of tension was the regular occurrence of nervous laughing fits. 14 of 40 subjects showed definite signs of nervous laughter and smiling. In the post-experimental interview, subjects took pains to point out that they were not sadistic types and that the laughter did not mean they enjoyed attacking the learner.
I'd like to tell you a little more about the experiment. First of all, the gentleman in there was not being shocked. He got no shocks whatsoever. Did you think he was?
Certainly I did. In fact, I tried to get my finger off the button as fast as I could.
No, he wasn't being shocked at all. And the main purpose of the experiment was to see how you would react to Mr. Williams' orders. Whether you would take them or defy his authority or what.
I defied it.
Certainly you did. Why didn't you go on?
The hell with him. Who the hell is he? As far as I'm concerned.
So what he's doing right now, a lot of the subjects did as well, which is they started smoking right afterwards to like calm their nerves.
Cigarette?
Oh, thanks for one. There's an ashtray right over there.
I'm gonna fast forward just a little. So
The victim was an accomplice of the
did this
experimenter. The drawing was rigged so that the naive subject was always the teacher, and the accomplice always became the learner. The victim, according to plan, provided many wrong answers. His verbal responses were standardized on tape, and each protest was coordinated to a particular voltage level on the shock generator with the aid of indicator lights. The experimenter, who was provided with a similar indicator panel, took notes on the subject's performance. He recorded any deviations from the prescribed sequence of shocks. The interval between the victim's answer and the subject's delivery of a shock, and the time in milliseconds that the shock lever was depressed. Unknown to the subjects, shock levels were automatically recorded by an event recorder wired directly into the shock generator. This provided us with an objective record of each subject's performance.
That is incorrect. This one will be 195 volts. The correct one.
Let me out of here.
Slow. Dance.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me out.
Red. That is incorrect. This will be at 3:30. The correct phrase is rich
Let me out of
boy.
here. Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let me out, I tell you. Let me out of here. Let me out of here. You have no right to hold me here.
The next phrase is
Let me
fast.
out. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me
Bird,
out. Let me
car, train, plane.
Continue, teacher.
That is incorrect. This will be 3:45. The correct answer is fast bird.
So you see people
The
just
next
kept
one,
going.
blunt.
Again, skipping a bit here.
Can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man there. You hear him hollering?
As I said before, the shocks may be painful, but they're not
He's in
dangerous.
there hollering. He can't stand it. What if something happens to him?
The experiment requires that you continue, teacher.
Yeah, but I'm not going to get that man sick in there. I mean, he's hollering in there. You know what I mean?
Whether the learner likes it or not, we must go on until he's learned all the word
I
pairs.
refuse to take the responsibility of him getting hurt in there. I'm not, he's in there hollering.
It's absolutely essential that you continue, teacher.
There's too many left here. I mean, geez, he gets wrong here. There's too many of them left. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
All right, next one, slow. Walk, dance, truck, music. Answer, please. Wrong. 195 volts. Dance.
Let me out of here.
Continue.
This guy they show quite far.
Necklace, moon, paint. Answer, please. Are you all right? 405 volts. The answer is moon.
That some
Nice and
people learner
hard.
just stopped responding.
Stonehead bread
And
work.
yet people kept going.
Answer, please. The answer is head, 420 volts. Next one, wet, night, grass, duck, cloth. The answer is duck, 435 volts. It says danger, severe shock here. Next X on the next one.
Continue, please.
435 volts. Next one, brave, woman, soldier, dog, horse. Answer is woman, 450 volts. That's it.
Now continue using the last switch on the board, please. The 450 switch for each wrong answer. Continue, please.
I'm not getting no answer.
Please continue. The next word is white.
But you think you should look in on him, please?
Not once we've started the
But
experiment.
what if something's happened to the man, had an attack or something there?
The experiment requires that we continue. Go on, please.
Don't the man's health mean anything?
Whether the learner likes it or not, we
But
must...
he might be dead in there. I mean, some people can't take the shock, sir.
Please
I mean, I
continue.
don't tend to be rude, but I mean, I think you should look in on him.
Whether
I mean, all you gotta do is look at the door. If I don't get no answer, no noise, something I think has happened to the gentleman in there, sir.
We must continue. Go on, please.
You're gonna keep giving him what, 450 volts every shot now?
That's correct. Continue. The next word is white.
White, cloud, horse, rock, house. Answer, please. The answer is horse, 450 volts. Next word, sad, face, music, clown,
He
girl.
just kept going until the experimenter told him he
I'd
could
like to
stop.
ask you, how do you feel, though?
I feel all right, but I don't like what's happened to that fellow in there. He's been hollering and we had to keep giving him shocks. I didn't like that one bit. I mean, he wanted to get out and he just kept going, kept throwing 450 volts. I didn't like that. He wouldn't even look at him, that gentleman.
Well, who was actually pushing the switch?
I was. But he kept insisting. I told him no, but he said he got to keep going. I told him it's time we stopped when we got up to 195, 210 volts.
But why didn't you just stop?
He wouldn't let me. I wanted to stop. I kept insisting to stop, but he says no. I told him to look in on the fellow there, but he wouldn't do it.
Actually, the shocks are not dangerous at all.
Well, I mean, I didn't hear no more answers from the fellow. I figured he should be looked in on anyway, but he wouldn't do it.
Well, let me ask you something. Is there anything that Mr. Wallace in there could have said that would have gotten you to stop?
Oh, no, I didn't hear you. The only thing I heard is the shock wasn't too bad.
Well, is there anything that Mr. Wallace could have said that would have gotten you to stop?
Something that he said that would have got me to stop?
Yeah.
No.
Why's that?
He didn't say anything about making me stop.
No, but is there anything that Mr. Wallace could have said that would have caused you to stop giving?
I mean, I was getting ready to
He's
walk
also
out.
smoking.
Oh, I'm
Stress
glad to hear
mechanism.
that.
He wasn't getting shocked really, and he's in one piece, and this was set up so that we could see how you would react to taking orders. Now, you seem quite reluctant to go on. In fact, on several occasions you said you didn't want to go on.
Well, I was concerned about the other party, sir.
Some people actually go on quite gleefully.
No matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe in other instances where human life wasn't involved or a person has suffered, maybe I keep going on. But I mean, I couldn't see the point. I don't want a guy to suffer there. I figured he was having a heart attack or something. That's the reason I wanted to stop.
Right. Well, you know that in a hospital situation, if you work for a doctor as an orderly, and he told you to give a hypodermic to a patient, even though the patient protested, well, you might have to do it.
Well, that's true, sir. If I understood, I don't know, maybe more of what the treatment was he was getting there, maybe I would go on. But, I mean, the way he was hollering, I thought he was in agony. I mean, then I think it's for somebody that knows a little more about this machine and stuff to say whether to go or not. And that's why I asked the gentleman there, should I keep going?
Why don't we bring in Mr. Wallace? He's actually an employee of the project. You'll see he's in one piece. Jim?
God bless you, boy. You have me shaking in here.
Nice to see you.
Same
Feel
here.
better now?
I sure as heck do.
That's good.
I thought you just about had it in there.
That's good.
Well, let me ask you something. Now that you know about the experiment, that he wasn't hurt, how do you feel about having been hurt?
Well, tell you the honest truth, I was thinking he was getting them shocks. I thought it was being overdone. I mean, I was just about ready to get out of it.
You're a good
I mean, I was concerned about you. I mean,
like
I should have known better. I mean, you wouldn't take any chances with the human life here, not with these experiments.
Many people, not knowing much about the experiment, claim that subjects who go to the end of the board are sadistic. Nothing could be more foolish as an overall characterization of these persons. The context of their action must always be considered. The individual, upon entering the laboratory, becomes integrated into a situation that carries its own momentum. In further experiments, we have attempted to analyze a few of the factors that contribute to the force of the situation. The salience of the victim seems in some degree to have regulated the subject's performance. Additional experimental conditions were designed to explore this possibility. In a first condition, the victim was placed in another room and cannot be heard or seen by the subject, except that at 300 volts he pounded on the wall in protest. After 300 volts, he no longer answered or was heard from. In a second condition, the victim's protest could be heard through the walls of the laboratory. This condition was depicted in the present film. In a third condition, the victim was placed in the same room as the subject and 1.5 feet from him. Thus visible, as well as audible and voice cues were provided. The final condition of the series was identical to this, with this exception. The victim only received a shock when his hand rested on a shock plate. At the 150 volt level, the victim demanded to be let free and refused to place his hand on the shock plate. The experimenter ordered the subject to force the victim's hand onto the plate. Thus, obedience in this condition required that the subject have physical contact with the victim in order to give him punishment beyond the 150 volt level. 40 adult subjects were studied in each condition. The data revealed that obedience was significantly reduced as the victim was made more immediate to the subject. If the spatial relationship of the subject...
So basically, if you could see the subject, had to touch the subject, you were much less likely to comply. And I think that that in and of itself explains some of the stuff from Nazi Germany, right? Most of the time when they were putting people in the gas chamber, right, they didn't see them, right? They were like flipping a switch to turn it on. And so that's a piece of it. But it is so interesting that like this quote unquote authority figure didn't really have authority over them, right? Like he's just a dude in a lab coat, and yet they listen to him. And again, I really like that they emphasize that it's like, it's not that these people are sadistic or horrible people. It's that, you know, they're ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, and they're just kind of going along with what they're told. And so this shows you how far folks went, how many people stopped. And so like a lot of people stopped when they got to XXX, but no one stopped like earlier, which is really kind of shocking. All right, we will end there for today. Everybody have a great weekend. And I will see y'all Monday.